Let's start the early days. You found the key to the birdcage, but Maddie is right there. You briefly seem to discuss keeping it a secret, but ultimately announce it to the whole group. Talk me through this strategy.
Yeah, so in the conversation leading up to that point, I had already kind of felt like I couldn't trust Maddie. It was more so like not even so much trust her, it just felt like somebody I wouldn't necessarily work with. We didn't really gel together. Like we had good conversations and stuff, but it was just a lot of butting of heads. Um, so it's funny when we all went out to obviously do this idol search together or T search, because at the time, remember, I didn't know it was an idol in there. When I found it, she was not too far off. I actually tried to tuck it in my underwear, but I didn't have any on because they were wet and I had them hanging up to dry. So it almost fell through my shorts. And that's when I grabbed it. And that's when she saw me. And I was like, all right, I got two choices. Either I could tell her about it and then I'm basically under her thumb, or I could just let everybody else know what's going on. And that's kind of the decision I made, to let everybody else know, because, the last thing I wanted, especially so early on in the game, was somebody else to be able to dictate how I have to play. And that's what ultimately I think would have happened. It would have been very easy for her to go back and tell everybody else, oh, Brandon found the key. He didn't want to, tell you guys about it, so we should vote him out. So I was like, I wasn't trying to create that much distrust with everybody else. I'd rather, just let this one person know I really don't want to work with you, as opposed to let everybody else know I'm out here keeping secrets on day two, so.
But then you publicly find out it is an idol. Does your heart sink? Like, how do you feel in that moment?
I immediately was like, what did I just do? Because not only did I find an idol, but there's also a fake idol in there as well that just completely lost any type of power could have possibly had. So I was like, the first thing I thought of was like, oh, the possibilities that I just had that I just threw away so quickly. It is what it is. I was like, you know what? If I would go back, I would still do it the same exact way. But I was really thinking like, man, I screwed that one up. So now I basically gotta fight my way out of it, which is what I tried to do. So
Well, speaking of the fake idol with it, what happened to that? Was it a keepsake?
no, so I kept it for a while until I saw, and once we got the note saying that everybody was coming to our beach, I immediately went and hit it.
Oh.
They actually just put out a deleted scene of it, I think like this morning or last night, where Kane actually finds it later on, throughout everything that's going on. And he knew I hid it, but I guess I never told them where exactly I did hide it. So when they were out on the idol search, he ended up coming across it. He finds it. It is what it
Ooh,
is. He
all
ended up putting
right.
it back. So he does put it back. And I'm not sure, kind of how it plays out after that, but I did rehide it.
But it's out there. Okay. So this takes you to that very first tribal, which was, what a tribal that was. But it seems like you did have a heads up to play the idol. Was that your plan going into it?
Yeah, 100%. I knew walking into that tribe, I was playing my idol. So there was a conversation that was had earlier in that day. Actually, not too long before we left for tribal. I had just came back from a walk. I was standing by the fire. It was Maddie, Kane, and Matthew. They were all standing in a group together, very clearly in plain sight. I could see them all. So I was like, all right, let me go over here, check the temperature, see what's going on. So I walk up. I asked him, I'm like, oh, what you guys talking about? And as soon as I walk up, Maddie's just staring at me like this, like wide-eyed. And I'm like, I've asked her, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I'm good. And I look over at Kane, he's looking at me the same exact way. And so I'm like, what are y'all talking about? And they're like, oh, we're just talking about how the vote's the same and nothing's changed. I'm like, okay. So then the two of them walk away. And that's when Matthew's still standing there. So I asked Matthew, because me and Matthew at that point, we're close. So I'm like, Matthew, what were they really talking about? And he's like, they're trying to flush your idol. So like, all right, that's what I thought. I'm like, all right, cool. Say no more. I'm playing my idol tonight. Well, and obviously in the back of your head, you're like, is Matthew telling me the truth, or does he just want me to burn my idol? What's really going on? But I had already kind of got that feeling. So I was like, you know what? It's public knowledge anyways. I'd much rather play it tonight, be safe, and kind of know where everybody stands, as opposed to go home off something I was tipped off about and leave with an idol in my pocket. So it kind of was a no-brainer for me that I was going to play my idol.
When everyone gets on the beach together, you threw Kane's name out as a possible target. But then by last night's episode, it's clearly a Soka Ratu war. What changed for you in there?
So when it comes to so when we were at the merge feast, I actually didn't throw his name out there. I just wasn't opposed to his name being thrown out there.
Mm.
I was like, it's okay if he ends up getting clipped in the crossfire, he gets clipped. But what ended up happening was me and Kane actually we had a good conversation, basically saying, we're better with each other than we are against each other. Based off of how everything was playing out and the dynamics of what was going on the beach, it was very clearly a Ratu versus Soka beat. Like even before we all kind of came together, it was kind of brewing. But once we actually touched down, especially after the mat vote, we knew, look, we have to stay strong because if we do, and we pull on maybe a couple other people, we can really kind of determine what was going on. So we just had the conversation as, we need to work together. We really need each other. We can do more for each other with each other than as if we're against each other. We basically, screw each other up. So I do think there would have came a time where we would have had to duke it out anyways, because I know he was going to eventually come for me again. And if he didn't come for me, I was going to come for him. And it was just because he put my name down first. So I just think at the point in the game that we were, it made sense for us to work together.
Tell me more about these dynamics, because it seemed like you considered Carson as a Ratu with you. And then was it just sort of like Jam Jam and Carolyn alone?
Um, yeah, in a way it kind of was. So when Carson first came to our beach, he was very like adamant about how he like to us, we thought they were close, but we thought Jam Jam was running the show. And
Mm.
when he got there, that's kind of what he echoed to us before we even said anything. So we're like, oh, so we were kind of right. We just didn't realize, how off you guys were. So he was like, I'm very happy to be on the beach with you guys, this, that, the other. And we bought it. We all 100% bought it. And then, throughout, I was doing a couple challenges together and just spending time with him, we thought that he was aligned with us. Now, obviously, as you come to find out, he's not. He's definitely playing the middle of it way more than we realized. And he was very smart and strategic in the way that, he knew what was going on with, the vote last night and Danny playing the idol, but he didn't say anything. He also didn't vote with them because he knew he didn't have to. He's like, why put my neck out there if you guys have the firepower to do it and it's not going to compromise, my position in the game. Now, Jam Jam and Carolyn, I knew that I didn't really know where Carolyn was aligned at. I knew that Jam Jam was kind of out there as well as like kind of one of those wild cards that could be pulled as a number. And I thought that we had pulled him as well based off of how, the last tribal with Matt and him had went and a couple other conversations that we had. I thought that, we kind of brought him in as well. But they were aware. They knew everything that was going on. As you can see, they're in the middle of it all. So everybody's going to them, basically trying to pull them on their side, and that kind of leads to what you see happen.
And you and Danny had a bit of a bonding moment on the journey. Was there anything in your mind that you might actually be working with him?
Um, so we always had the idea of possibly working with each other. We knew that we did want to work with each other, but at the same time, we also weren't dumb to what was going on at camp. We knew it was a Ratu versus Soka war. We knew that that line was going to be drawn, and it was a matter of who's going to make the first move. And they don't show this, but he was actually who I thought was our other target because I did think that there was a possibility that either Franny could play an idol or Danny could play an idol. Um,
Mm.
so with that, in my perfect world, we would have split the votes on Danny. He plays idol for Franny and he goes home. But obviously that's not how it played out. We weren't on the same page. I never checked in with everybody before we left for tribal, so that was 100% on me. Plus there was obviously the X factors of Carson and Jam Jam who were, like I said, I thought were aligned with us. They knew what was going on, but they weren't going to ever speak up, and they probably wouldn't have split the votes anyways, just because to them, they wanted to take one of us out. Because if we would have been able to get a stroke out, we would have definitely had the numbers and been able to kind of control what we need to control.
Right. So, okay. So you did think more about splitting and you were considering Danny because I was going to ask that why is Franny the target here? But so now why were Franny and Danny the targets over Heidi? Just explain how they fit in your mind.
So Franny was, for one, just a beast out there. From every aspect of the game, the physical challenges, the mental aspect of it, and just her social game, she was a huge threat to everybody. So I think with her, the putting the vote on her seemed like the best decision. With Danny, that came after the fact. So Jam Jam actually did come up to me at one point on the beach and told me that Danny had put my name out there. Now he didn't say anything about him having an idol. He didn't say anything about him possibly playing it. But we knew that there was a possibility that one of them had it. Um, Heidi also had kind of had a little bit of a clue that she thought Danny might have had it, and she was kind of telling us that, but she never confirmed or denied it. And I wasn't really working with Heidi like that. But we knew that the possibility of an idol being out there was real. So it
Mhm.
was more so we're like, all right, if one of them plays it, we'll get the other. If the other plays it, then the plan doesn't change. So
Oh, so there was just
more
like a miscommunication on like throwing some votes on Danny.
huge miscommunication because that conversation that we had happened so early on in the day. It was like literally right when we got back from tribal, and what I say is kind of the death of me is we were all sitting around. So that was the day we actually painted our Vava flag, and we're all sitting there painting, having a good time, kumbaya. It's not that many really people talking strategy, and all of a sudden, like, oh, it's time to go to tribal. And so never at any point did I get to check in with anybody before tribal. And so I'm in my head, I'm like, well, I think we know what's going on. I think everybody's on the same page, but are we? And so literally right after Danny plays his idol, I actually look over to Lauren and I say to her, I'm like, he has no idea what he just did. I was like, he has no idea what he just did. Because in my head, I'm thinking that we split the votes. And then as the votes were being read, and I realized, I'm like, that's way too many Franny votes. Like, that's way too many Franny votes. It was like, you know what? It's my time. Sure enough, that's exactly what happened.
Did you have a sense going into tribal that if something did fall apart, you would be the name, you would be the target?
Yeah, only because I was kind of tipped off a little bit. And I knew that there was the fear that, all right, I haven't been immune pretty much this whole game.
Mhm.
Um, like I didn't it didn't really hit me how that I wasn't, but I knew that I was winning immunity. So I think there was a fear that for one, I could keep winning them and people not have the opportunity to take me out anymore. But then also I was starting to get into a pretty good spot as far as the social game is concerned and really understanding kind of where people were aligned at. So, you know, it seemed it was a great move. I would have made the same move in their position. So it was what it was.
Yeah. No, I've heard a lot about you and Lauren were really close, even though we didn't quite see it. Were you feeling like you and Lauren were kind of running your little group? Was that the vibe?
Um, I won't say that we were running it per se. I think that we were very tightly aligned. So we were bouncing it like anything. That was probably my number one out there at that point. So we were kind of bouncing everything off each other. Now we were trying to work closely with obviously the other Ratu members because we knew we couldn't do it alone. So I wouldn't say we were necessarily dictating the vote, but we were definitely working together like very, very closely. All the way from I guess that was, before the first tribal when she told me she had her extra advantage, which they actually didn't show.
Mhm.
But I knew going to that first tribal that she had gotten an extra vote and that she was going to have basically not play her vote at a tribal. Now,
Mhm.
never did she tell me that I was the vote, but I think that was more so because it was more so because she didn't want to. In the case that it did work, she didn't want to have to put herself out there and possibly put herself in a bad position. If what happened was supposed to happen.
Now we know that Jamie is holding on to a fake idol, and we're under the impression that she thinks it's real. Did you have a sense that she had any advantages?
Not a clue. I knew that she would have had an idol from the merge, but I knew that, I
Mhm.
mean, from when we had the tribe swap, but I knew that that had no power after that vote. I had not a clue that she had found another idol at the Ratu beach and definitely didn't know it was fake. So that was all news to me when I watched it back. I was like, oh my gosh, like that's crazy.
If you could sum up this whole experience in one word, what would it be?
Um, in one word, I think I would say I don't know if I have one word for it, but I would definitely say the opportunity of a lifetime.
Mhm.
It's very rare that you get a chance to distance yourself from everything, news media, social media, like your family, everything, and just be in an environment like that where you just get to literally play a game. You get to meet other people, you get to connect with people who you would have never expected to like not even communicate with, but like gel as well as you did. Like I learned so much about some of the people out there, like more than I might know about somebody who I've known for 10 years. I might learn about somebody in 3 days. So it was really a cool opportunity to, be a part of this cast, meet the people that I got to meet, and then just be a part of a show that we've all been watching for so long. Like it's crazy, like watching back and seeing yourself in Survivor, knowing you watched so many other people before you, and then like just knowing that now you're a part of that community. Now you're kind of leaving your own legacy in whatever way you leave it. But it was, an opportunity of a lifetime for sure.
That's so good to hear. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.